Good morning, dear students. I'm Dr. Hemilta KS, Assistant Professor, Department of Physics, Mahani Science College for Women, Bengaluru. Having understood various types of nuclear reactions in the previous session, I'm going to consider and explain various conservation laws that are applicable to nuclear reactions in this particular session. Nuclear reactions are governed by certain conservation laws. Some physical quantities that get conserved in any nuclear reactions are total mass and energy, total electric charge, total number of nucleons, total linear momentum, total angular momentum, conservation of parity, conservation of isotopic spin, and so on. Let us try to understand each one of them in detail. Let me consider the first, conservation of mass energy. The total energy, that is sum of the rest mass energies of all the nuclei taking part in a reaction and their kinetic energies, must be equal to sum of the rest mass energies and kinetic energies of the products. That is, in general, we can say the total energy of the reactants should be equal to total energy of the products. And here you clearly understand that total energy is nothing but sum of the rest mass energy and the kinetic energies of the respective elements taking part in the reaction. And that should be considered product side separately and reactant side separately, and they should be equal to one another to validate the law of conservation of mass energy. General representation of any nuclear reaction is using the equation x plus x, which gives rise to y plus small y. Here small x is called an incident particle, or it is also called a projectile, or also called a bombarding particle. Capital X is the target nucleus on which you are incidenting the particle, and the reactions between them or interactions between them leads to the formation of products, where product nucleus is denoted by capital Y here, and small y represents an ejected particle or an ejectile, or it is also called an outgoing particle. In terms of mass energy terms, we can write the expression as capital M with small x as subscript representing rest mass of a projectile, plus capital M with capital X as subscript representing rest mass of the target nucleus, plus Ex represents, that is capital E with small x as subscript represents the kinetic energy of the projectile, which is equal to capital M with capital Y as subscript representing rest mass of the product nucleus, capital M with small y as a subscript representing rest mass of the ejectile, and EY, that is capital E with capital Y as subscript representing kinetic energies of the product nucleus, where capital E with small y as subscript representing kinetic energy of the ejectile. Together, they represent the equation in the form of mass energy terms when we consider the conservation laws. And here, if you rearrange the term, you can write the mass of the reactants minus mass of the products equals to the kinetic energies of the products minus kinetic energies of the reactants, which is equal to Q, called reaction energy. And here, mx plus mx, that is the rest masses of the reactants, minus here my plus my represents rest masses of product nucleus, and here product elements, I mean, and this should be equal to kinetic energies of the product, that is Ey plus Ey minus kinetic energies of the reactants, and here it is particularly a projectile, which should be equal to energy released in the equation, which is called Q value of the reaction. And here if you consider, as I explained, mx, m capital X, m small y, m capital Y are the rest masses of different nuclei, whereas E capital X, E small x, E small y, E capital Y are the kinetic energies of the different nuclei. Particularly, here we are considering capital E with capital X as subscript, which is the kinetic energy of the target nucleus is always considered to be equal to 0. As we know, the target nucleus is always considered to be at rest in our nuclear reaction. And here using that, the reactant kinetic energy corresponds to only the kinetic energy associated with the projectile, and Ex is taken as 0. Ex means E capital X is taken as 0. So considering this rest mass energy applied to nuclear reaction to validate the conservation law, here we are using some of the examples and we are trying to understand this conservation of mass energy. Let me consider the first example here. Lithium associated with mass 7, atomic number 3, interacting with helium whose mass number is 4 and atomic number is 2, and their interaction leads to the formation of boron with mass number 11 and atomic number 5 in its excited state represented by the star, indicating it is an unstable nucleus or a compound nucleus, and further it disintegrates into boron 11 with atomic number 5 in its ground state or normal state, emitting the excitation energy associated with boron as neutrino. So here the excited nucleus, whose lifetime is very, very small, they gives rise to the ejection of particles or radiation, the energy associated with them, and comes back to normal state or ground state. So that's what you are observing here. Excited boron get de-excited to its ground state and becomes boron 11 with the atomic number 5 in its ground state, and along with the release of neutrino. Here if you apply the respective masses and if you observe the difference in mass and convert that into energy, you can see that mass energy conservation is valid for this particular reaction. So in the next example, we'll try to understand this mass energy conservation in detail along with their respective masses. Here you consider interaction between deuterium, which is indicated by D2 or 1H2. When hydrogen is having mass number 2 and atomic number 1, it is called deuterium, and its mass is considered to be here 2.0141 AMU. And when it interacts with the tritium, tritium is nothing but represented by T3, which is 1H3 nucleus. That is hydrogen, if it possesses mass number 3, atomic number 1, then it is considered as tritium, and its mass is around 3.0160 AMU. The total mass of the reactants, that is deuterium and tritium, is 5.0301 AMU. Due to interactions between these two, nuclear reactions takes place and they form the product elements with a release of helium nucleus. That is, helium is associated with mass 4 and atomic number 2, and its mass is around 4.0026 AMU. Along with it, neutron will be released whose mass is 1.0087 AMU. Along with these two product elements, there will be release of enormous energy. Actually, when you consider sum of the product elements masses, it is 5.0113 AMU. And if you compare the masses of reactants and products elements, there will be difference in mass, and that mass difference is appearing as decrease in mass on the product side. So where that mass will go off? You have to analyze where that mass is situated, where the mass is converted to energy in this particular product side. That is, when you consider this mass difference between the two, you know very well that according to Einstein's mass energy relation, E is equal to mc square, energy can be converted to mass and mass can be realized in terms of energy. They are interconvertible and they are valid by the equation E is equal to mc square, and we know that 1 AMU of mass is equivalent to 931 MeV of energy, that is mega electron volt energy. So that using that conversion factor, here the difference in mass between the reactants and the products, which is 0.0188 AMU, when you multiply to 931.481 or 931.5 MeV per AMU, gets converted to 17.5 mega electron volt. And this represents the Q value or the energy released in the reaction on the product side, that is along with the helium and neutron. So that small difference in mass, which appears as lesser mass on the product side, will be appearing as energy on the product side, thereby conserving the total energy or total mass energy on the left hand side equal to total mass energy on the right hand side or the product side. So this confirms the law of conservation of mass energy in this particular nuclear reaction. So with this, we'll move on to the next type of conservation law called conservation of charge. the total electrical charges on the reactant side must be equal to total electrical charge on the product side. This is very straightforward statement. So when you consider the example of a nuclear reaction between barium and helium here, barium associated with mass number 9 and atomic number 4, and helium having mass 4 and atomic number 2, due to their interactions, they form the product elements carbon, a stable product nucleus with mass 12 and atomic number 6, along with the neutron whose mass number is 1 and the atomic number is 0. So you know very well that the proton number or the atomic number represents the number of charges associated with that particular nuclei. So considering the charges on the reactant side, charge of the helium plus charge of the barium, which is 2 plus 4 is equal to 6. Similarly, when you consider the charges on the product side, carbon plus nitrogen you have to consider. So charge on the carbon is 6, charge on the neutron being a neutral particle, it is 0, so it is equal to 6. So when you compare charges on the reactant side, it is equal to charges on the product side, and that confirms the conservation of charge in this particular nuclear reaction. And also you can see that summation of charge Q will be always equal to 0, indicating that the charge is being conserved. We'll take up another example for this. You can see in case of uranium-235 with the atomic number 92 interacting with the neutron whose mass number is 1 and atomic number is 0. Due to their interaction, this splits up into two lighter nuclei of comparable masses, that is barium-141 with atomic number 56 and krypton-92 with atomic number 36, along with the release of 3 neutron, that is 3 neutron associated with mass number 1 and atomic number 0, along with enormous amount of energy called Q value of the reaction. And here if you consider charges on the left hand side and right hand side, on the reactant side it is with respect to uranium, charge is 92 and neutron it is 0, total charge is 92. On the right hand side for barium it is 56 and krypton 36, and neutron being a neutral particle 0, and the charge again on the right hand side is also 92, indicating that the charge is being conserved in this particular nuclear reaction, where the total number of charges on the left hand side is equal to total number of charges on the right hand side. So this confirms the law of conservation of charge. So we'll move on to the next example, carbon 6, which disintegrates into or which forms the nitrogen 7 along with the release of electron and neutrino, that is anti-neutrino, anti-electron neutrino, in the famous equation called negative beta decay process. If you consider this particular example, in negative beta decay process, it do exist in elements in which number of neutrons are more than number of protons. If you consider this particular example, carbon associated with the atomic number 6 and its mass number 14, if you consider, the number of neutrons are more compared to number of protons. And here one neutron gets converted to proton along with the release of negative charge element, that is electron, along with anti-neutrino, that is negative electron neutrino. So this type of reaction is called negative beta decay reaction or negative beta decay process. And here when you consider the total charges on the left hand side, it is 6, and total charges on the nitrogen, it is 7, but electron being negatively charged with -1 as the charge, 7 minus 1 again 6. So number of charges on the left hand side equal to total number of charges on the right hand side, which confirms the law of conservation of charge in this particular negative beta decay process. Similarly, if you consider beta plus decay process, that is positive beta decay process, here in this example you can see magnesium, whose atomic number is 12 and mass number is 23, gets converted to sodium 11 with the mass number 23, along with the release of positron E plus and positive electron neutrino, that is without bar you are writing the electron neutrino, positive electron neutrino in this process. And here you can see that this kind of process arises in the elements where number of protons are more in number compared to neutrons. So proton gets converted to neutron along with the release of positron and the positive electron neutrino. Here you can see that the magnesium, which is having an atomic number 12, so one proton getting converted to neutron and becoming sodium is reduced by its atomic number by 1. So 12 becomes 11, indicating the new element formed as sodium, and the mass remains 23 as such, along with the release of positron and positive electron neutrino. So this type of reaction or process is called positive beta decay process. And here again, if you consider total charges on the reactant side, it is 12, and total charges on the product side, it is 11 plus, with respect to positron, you have plus 1. So again, on the product side also it is 12, and that confirms the law of conservation of charges in this particular process also, particular reaction also. So with this, we will move to another type of conservation law, which is very important, called conservation of nucleons. This is a basic conservation law. The total number of nucleons in the system before the reaction must be equal to total number of reactions, total number of nucleons after the reaction. I'll repeat this. The total number of nucleons in the system before the reaction must be equal to total number of nucleons after the reaction. So here, if you consider this particular nuclear reaction, you know very well that nucleons is nothing but the mass number, which is sum of protons and neutrons. So we have to consider total nucleons on the reactant side and total nucleons on the product side, and if they are equal, that confirms the conservation of nucleons in a reaction. So here in this particular equation, you have number of nucleons on the reactant side as 4 from helium, and for barium it is 9, so it is 13 totally. On the product side, if you consider, it is carbon 12, and for neutron it is 1, so again it is 13. So number of nucleons on the reactant side is equal to total number of nucleons on the product side, indicating that total number of nucleons is being conserved in this particular reaction, and hence the validity of conservation of nucleons. So let us consider the same conservation law of nucleons in the other example, which is a popular nuclear reaction between uranium-235-92 and neutron, which forms an unstable excited compound nucleus, uranium-236-92, that being unstable disintegrates further into 2 lighter nuclei of comparable mass, like a krypton 92 as mass number with atomic number 36, and barium with mass number 141 and atomic number 56. And along with that, there will be release of 3 neutron with enormous amount of energy in the reaction. Again, if we consider here also the number of nucleons on the reactant side, it is 235 from uranium plus 1 from neutron, it is 236. On the product side, if you observe, from krypton it is 92, from barium it is 141, and from neutron it is not 1. You remember there are 3 neutrons, so it is 3. So totally there will be 236 nucleons on the product side. So here number of nucleons, total number of nucleons on the reactant side is equal to total number of nucleons on the product side, and that validates the law of conservation of nucleons in this particular equation or reaction. So with this, we will move to conservation of linear momentum. Total linear momentum of the bombarding particle, considering the target nucleus to be always at rest, must be equal to total linear momentum of the products. So here when I say in general, we say total linear momentum of the reactants should be equal to total linear momentum of the products. But since we know that always we consider the target nucleus to be at rest, there will be no momentum contribution with respect to target on the reactant side, and we consider it is the total linear momentum which is corresponding to bombarding particle, and that should be equal to total linear momentum from both product nucleus and ejectile. So here capital P with small x representing the linear momentum of the projectile, which should be equal to P with capital Y subscript representing the linear momentum of the product nucleus, plus P with small y representing the linear momentum of the ejectile, and that it gives rise to the law of conservation of linear momentum. And here, as I said, Px will be equal to 0. That is linear momentum corresponding to target nucleus represented by capital X as subscript represents it is equals to 0 as it is considered to be at rest in the reaction. So with this, we'll move on to another very important type of conservation law called conservation of angular momentum. The total angular momentum I comprising the vector sum of intrinsic total spin angular momentum S and relative total orbital angular momentum L of the products must be equal to the total angular momentum of the reactants. You try to understand that whenever we consider total angular momentum, it is the sum of total spin angular momentum and total orbital angular momentum, and that should be on the reactant side, whatever you get as a total angular momentum after the reaction, even on the product side, it should be same. That means the total angular momentum on the product side should be equal to total angular momentum of the reactants. So this we can analyze through the example considering the interaction between uranium-235 with atomic number 92, and when it interacts with neutron, it gives rise to two lighter nuclei of comparable masses. Here in this particular process, zirconium 98 with mass number and 40 as atomic number, and tellurium with a mass number 136 and atomic number 52, along with the release of two neutrons and energy released in the equation represented by Q. And here, before going to assign the values of I for reactants and products, let us consider based on the mass number of any nuclei, how to treat the value of I. So here for any nuclei of odd mass number, I is an odd multiple of half h bar, or it is nothing but half integral values. For nuclei of even mass number, I is always an even multiple of half h bar, or we consider it as an integral value. So when you use this particular idea and apply it to nuclear reaction here on the left hand side, that is on the reactant side, neutron with mass number as odd and uranium with mass number as odd, you have a half integral plus half integral, which gives rise to the total integral values on the left hand side, that is on the reactant side. Similarly, when you consider I on the product side, it is zirconium mass is even, tellurium mass is even, nitrogen, since there are two neutrons, neutrons, there are two neutrons, again it is even, along with the release of energy, and here it is each one of them is integral, so the total value is also going to be integral. So according to conservation of angular momentum, we see that on the reactant side, the I, which appears to be integral, even on the product side it appears to be integral, and it validates the law of conservation of angular momentum in this particular reaction, and similarly it can be verified for any nuclear reaction. Let us consider the conservation of parity, which is very new to you. The term parity is new to you, but it is very, very important to understand once you are learning nuclear reaction, nuclear process. And here we'll try to understand first the meaning of parity, then we'll try to understand what the conservation of parity is going to be validated in reactions. And the wave function of a system of particles or a nucleus describes completely its behavior as a function of space and time. So whenever you consider any system of particle or a nucleus which is represented by a particular wave function, is going to describe the behavior of that particular particle or nucleus as a function of space and time. And that behavior of the wave function, if you are going to study under the reflection of space coordinates through the origin, that determines the parity of the system. So here when you consider any system in a particular coordinates, space coordinate system, say for example in a three-dimensional space, it is associated with the coordinates x, y, z. And when you consider the reflection of space coordinates, the same coordinates will become inverse of it, that is minus x, minus y, minus z. So when you consider in that reflection space coordinate system, the behavior of the wave function, how it behaves, based on the nature of the wave function, you are going to understand a special property associated with the variables or nuclear reactions conservation, which is called parity of the system. And here we are going to understand what is conservation of parity based on the behavior of the wave function and its value assigned based on the parity of it. So under the reflection of space coordinates, the wave function may change sign or may remain unchanged. So when you are considering this nucleus or any particle or a system of particle in a particular coordinate system, when you take the reflection of space coordinates of that particular system, if the wave function representing it changes its sign after the inversion, that is after taking the reflection of space coordinates, in that case, we consider how the parity is going to be, and similarly if it is remaining unchanged, what the parity value will be. That we have to analyze by considering here the wave function which is unchanged upon reflection of space coordinates, its parity is always even, and if it changes its sign, it is going to be having an odd parity. So this is how the parity value will be associated with a particular system which you are studying based on its behavior of the wave function nature subjected to transformation from space coordinates to reflection space coordinate system. So here when you consider the product of two wave functions associated with the two different parity, what will be the resultant parity we have to analyze. For that we are considering here the product of two odd parity wave functions results in an even parity function. That means if you have two wave functions, each one of them are associated with odd parity, their product will always results in an even parity function, while the product of two wave functions of even parity results in an even parity wave function. That means if you have two wave functions, both of them are even, their product, you are going to see that as a result of it, the even parity wave function. Similarly, you have another third type called the product of an even and odd parity wave functions, which results in an odd parity wave function. So out of the two wave functions, if one is even and one is odd, when you take the product of them, the resultant wave function will be associated with odd parity. So with this, we'll try to understand how to calculate the total parity of the reaction. In that case, we consider the total parity of the system as the product of intrinsic parity of the target nucleus and the bombarding particles. So when we consider on the reactants, we are considering the product of intrinsic parity of the target nucleus as well as bombarding particle. That gives the total parity of the system which we are considering, and that should be equal to the parity, total parity on the product side. Then it validates the law of conservation of parity, and we say that according to law of conservation of parity, the total parity before the reaction must be equal to total parity after the reaction. And if you consider the strong nuclear interaction and weak interaction or weak nuclear reaction, you can see that no violation of parity has been observed in a nuclear reaction for strong nuclear forces or strong nuclear reactions. However, parity does not appear to be conserved in weak interaction. That means in weak interaction, the law of conservation of parity fails. It is not valid, whereas it is strictly followed in strong nuclear reactions or strong nuclear forces. So the last sentence is very, very important. You should note that no violation of parity has been observed in nuclear reaction for strong nuclear forces, indicates the confirmation or conservation of parity in those nuclear reactions in which strong nuclear interactions takes place. However, parity does not appear to be conserved in weak interaction. With this, we'll move on to very important type of conservation law called conservation of isotopic spin, which is represented by capital I or capital T. And here isotopic spin or isospin is a term introduced to describe the group of particles which have nearly the same mass, such as proton and neutron, which makes up the nucleon. And here when we consider particularly, for examples, baryons and mesons, they form group of particles in terms of multiplets, and you're going to see that groups of particles will have the same mass approximately, and their behavior will be denoted with a particular quantum number called isotopic spin or isospin. And here the particles of a particular group, if you consider, they differ in charge. As I said, for example, if you consider a group of particles consisting of proton and neutron, they do differ in their charges. proton is positively charged with +1 and neutron is neutral particle without any charge. They do differ in charge when you consider particles of the same group, and they interact each other by means of strong interaction. So whenever you consider these particles of same mass, I mean, they are going to interact with each other by means of strong interaction. Because of the charge independence of strong reactions or strong interactions, all the particles of a group interact with another particle or another particle strongly in the same way. That means when you have, for example, proton and neutron, proton can interact with neutron, neutron can interact with neutron, proton can interact with proton. Any interaction, if you consider being their charge independent in strong interactions, the particles of that group, they interact with each other very strongly in the same way. That means their charges are no way considered in strong interactions. They're charge independent, and they are going to interact in the same way very strongly, whether it is between proton and proton or proton and neutron or between neutron and neutron. That is the beauty of this particular conservation of isotopic spin, or the concept of isotopic spin here. And here we consider that the charge independence has led to the introduction of another quantum number called isotopic spin. So this concept of charge independence, which are applicable strictly to all strong interactions or strong nuclear reactions, is understood by introducing another quantum number called isotopic spin, or isospin, which is represented by capital I or capital T. And it is defined in such a way that 2i plus 1 gives the number of particles in a particular group. That means when you consider any group of particles formed, how many particles are present in that particular group can be found by knowing the value of I and using the general notation or general formula 2i plus 1. So when I substitute for I and just calculate how many particles are present in a particular group, and it is a vector quantity whose magnitude is always represented by I into I plus 1, where I is nothing but your isotopic spin, and it is a dimensionless quantity. The spin term is tacked on or tagged on to it because the addition of the isospins follows the same rules as spin. So whatever the addition of spin rules we have adopted in the finding out the total spin, the same addition of rules we are applying for isospins also. So that's why the isospin, even though it is not really a spin, it carries out the tag of spin term along with it, and it does not have any units of angular momentum because it is not representing really a spin. The Z component of isospin, that is Iz, is quantized by the rule Iz equals I comma I minus 1, I minus 2, and so on up to minus I, which is assigned in the order of decrease in charge. This you are going to analyze by considering the examples. And here when I say capital I, that is total spin we are talking about, total isotopic spin we are talking about. When I say Iz, I am considering the Z directional component of I, that is the projection of I along the Z direction I'm considering, and those values are taken individually and validated for conservation of isospin or isotopic spin. And here let me consider the example nucleons, which is formed by proton and neutron. It forms a doublet of particles because you know it is two particles involved, and here isospin I equals to half with projection Iz equals plus half for proton, and isospin I equals to be again a half for the neutron too, but its projection value, Iz component value, will be minus half. So any two members of the proton-neutron isospin doublet experience the same strong interaction, whether it is between proton, 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 neutron, 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 have the same strong force of attraction, which already I have explained you. So here, if you consider how to find out in a doublet how many particles are there, since you know the value of I here, which is half, you use the equation 2i plus 1. 2 into half is 1, plus 1, 2. So there are two particles in a doublet where I value is half. That corresponds to proton and neutron, which belongs to a doublet. So in this way, you can analyze how many particles are present in a particular group. Next example, we'll consider the case of three pions, that is pi plus, pi not, pi minus, indicating positive pion, neutral pion and negative pion, with all having mass approximately around 140 MeV. They compose a triplet, suggesting isospin I equals to 1 with the projection Iz, which is plus 1 for the positive pion, and isospin I equals to 1 with the projection Iz equals 0 for the neutral pion, and isospin I equals to 1 with the projection Iz equals to minus 1 for the negative pion. So their total isospin is noted by 1. Their projection value is dependent on the three different types of pions. For positive pion, it is plus 1, and for neutral, it is 0, and for the negative, it is minus 1, which you can verify from this Iz component values. Here, if I say the Iz values for a particular I value can be calculated based on their decreasing order of the charge. Here, I, if I consider I is 1, for the next particle, it becomes I minus 1 is 1 minus 1, 0, and I minus 2, it is 1 minus 2 minus 1. That's what we are observing here. So I with plus 1 for positive pion and 0 for neutral and minus 1 for the negative pions. And again, if you want to find out how many particles are present in this particular group which is associated with I value 1, you can calculate by 2I plus 1, that is I is 1, so it becomes 2 plus 1, which is 3. So there are 3 particles do exist in case of where the group is associated with isospin value 1, and it is called a triplet. So similarly, you can calculate for singlet. If I is 0, it represents only one particle existing in that group. Similarly, if you consider kaons, it can be associated with K plus and K naught, that is positive kaon and neutral kaons, and it is associated with the I value half. So in simple, we can say that this isotopic spin defines the different states of nuclei, different charge states of a nuclei. So let us consider in case of antiparticle, what will be the value of isotopic spin? Antiparticle multiplets have the same isotopic spin values of that of the particles under consideration, but Iz is negative of that particle. Whichever particle you are taking, for that particle, whatever the value of isotopic spin, for its antiparticle, the isotopic spin remains the same, but Iz value is always taken as negative. So if positive Iz value is for the particle, its antiparticle will possess Iz value of minus. So that indicates that antiparticle multiplets have the same isotopic spin of that of the particles, but its Iz value is negative of that particular particle. And based on different types of interactions or different types of reactions, we can validate the conservation of isotopic spin. Here, when you consider strong reactions or strong interactions between the particles, when you consider the total isotopic spin, which is added as a vector quantity, and Iz, its z direction value, that is projection value, are going to be conserved. So in strong reactions, both I and Iz get conserved. But when you consider weak reactions, it has been observed that both I and Iz will not conserve. That means I and Iz are not conserved in weak interactions or weak reactions. When you come to the last type, electromagnetic reactions or electromagnetic interactions, I is conserved in this case, but Iz is, Iz is conserved here, but I is not conserved. So we can see the difference. Out of the total spin and projection of isotopic spin along the z direction, we can see that total spin I is not conserved. Total isotopic spin is not conserved, but whereas Iz is conserved for EM reactions or electromagnetic reactions or interactions. So we'll try to understand the first two types, which are very important, along with some examples. And here I'm considering an example of strong interaction or strong reaction where neutral pion is interacting with proton, which is giving rise to positive pion and neutron. And you write the corresponding isotopic spin, total isotopic spin I, and its projection value Iz separately for both reactants and products, and take their summation for each of them separately and observe for total reactant side and product side whether going to be same or not. So here I'm considering I value which is for pi naught, that is neutral pion has I value 1, just now we discussed, and proton half, and pi plus has 1 and neutron has half. So similarly, when you consider Iz value, for pi naught it is 0, just now we understood, and proton it is half, and for pi plus it is 1 and neutron minus half. So when I consider summation of I for the reactants, if I consider reactants pi naught and P, that is 3 by 2 is the total summation, that is 1 plus half. I value is 1 plus half on the reactant side, so it is 3 by 2 first term. And similarly on the product side, 1 plus half 3 by 2, that is here in the summation I term, that becomes the third term for product side. So 3 by 2 on the reactant side equal to 3 by 2 on the product side for total I. Similarly for Iz, when you take the summation, 0 plus half is half on the reactant side, and 1 minus half is again half on the product side, and both the values on the reactant side and product side are same, equal, and that confirms the validity of conservation of isotopic spin or isospin in this particular strong nuclear interaction. And let us move to the weak reaction or weak decay or weak interaction. Here K naught is giving rise to pi naught plus pi naught. K ions, that is neutral K ions, if you consider I value is half, and for neutral pions, it is 1, 1, 2 particles are coming out. And Iz value, if I consider, K naught is minus half, whereas pi naught each is 0, 0. So if you observe the summation of I separately and Iz separately, both on reactant side and product side, they are not equal. And that tells you that they're not conserved. That means both I and Iz are not conserved in case of weak nuclear reactions or weak interactions. So this is what you are going to understand about conservation of isotopic spin or isospin, which we apply for various nuclear reactions, and we see that they are getting conserved, and that confirms the conservation of isotopic spin in a particular nuclear reaction. If it is not following this particular total isospin on the left hand side not equal, if they're not equal to our right hand side, we say the law is failed, conservation law is failed. So these are the two important interactions which we are going to consider, and we understand that for strong reactions, always both I and Iz are conservative. For weak reactions or weak interactions, I and Iz are not conserved. So after understanding various types of conservation laws which are applicable to nuclear reactions and seeing their validity, how we can understand, we are going to consider some of the physical quantities which are not conserved in particular nuclear reaction. Importantly, it is magnetic dipole moment and electric quadrupole moment of the reacting nuclei. These two physical parameters are observed to be not conserved in nuclear reaction because these moments depends on internal distribution of mass, charge and current within the nuclei involved and are not subjected to conservation laws. So this is how these two parameters are not being conserved in any nuclear reaction, and that represents the quantities which are not conserved. And with this, let me move on to summary of the session. You are going to revise what we have learned, what you have learned so far. That is, you could understand basic conservation laws like total energy, total charge, total nucleons, and so on. Also, you understood how to take the total angular momentum as a sum of total spin angular momentum and orbital angular momentum, and how it should be of same nature both on the reactant side and product side. And based on the mass number value of the nuclei, how to assign the value of I, from there by how to validate the law of conservation of angular momentum we considered. And also you learned how to consider the concept of parity and its assignment based on the wave function symmetry. And also you learned how the sign of the wave function, if subjected to change, will give us to different types of parity values. And also you recognized another important law of conservation called conservation of isospin or isotopic spin, where you understood the concept of various groups of particles formed whose mass are nearly the same, associated with some energy, and they may form either doublet, triplet, or singlet based on number of particles involved in it, based on their isotopic spin. You can calculate how many particles are present in a particular group, and they are not at all dependent on charge. That you should remember. Isospin is a quantum number which is independent of charge in strong nuclear interactions, and we also observed in weak interactions how the isospin conservation fails. So to understand the isospin, you need to understand isospin is independent of charge in case of strong nuclear interactions, and thus it verifies the law of conservation of isotopic spin in nuclear reactions. So with this, let me consider the references what I have used for this particular session. It is Nuclear Physics by D.C. Tayal, Atomic and Nuclear Physics by Ghoshal, Modern Physics by Basavaraj, Concept of Modern Physics Arthur Beiser, which is mainly a concept-based book written by Beiser, which is very, very important in understanding any of the basic concepts. And with this, I have taken some of the concepts from internet. So with this, I'm going to wind up this particular session. I hope my explanation is clear to you. You have understood each and everything what I have explained in this particular session, and just go through it and make yourself more perfect, and see you in the next class with more higher topics. Thank you. Bye.